So again, welcome. Again, you have the Michigan Department of Education and Michigan Education Corps here with you. My name is Brandy Archer. I'm the Literacy Manager in the Office of Education Improvement and Innovation at the department. And I'll let Lisa introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Brown, and I'm an early literacy coaching consultant in the Office of Field Services with MDE, and I also support with the multi-tiered systems of support work through the transformation zones at the department.
Holly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Holly Windrum, and I'm the Executive Director with Michigan Education Corps.
So today our webinar is going to help dispel some myths and give some information around the Michigan Education Corps, the legislation and the funding. And then Lisa and I are here from the department to talk about the multi-tiered systems of support and how schools can use that to determine if the Michigan Education Corps is right for them. And Michigan Education Corps will share what their program is and what their program isn't. And we have a principal on as well who will help to share his experiences. We know that Tier 1 instruction is imperative for literacy education in Michigan, and we know schools cannot intervene their way out of that. So while today we're talking about an intervention, you'll also have heard the Department of Ed talking a lot about Tier 1 instruction and the core literacy essentials. And so we want to make sure that we're couching this in the space where it belongs, and we want to make sure that schools are making good choices about what will work for the needs of their students. So just couching our conversation today in that lens of how we're supporting all the great things that are happening in Michigan.
In the water with 14 of our dolphins right now.
Our agenda today is to talk about
dolphins. We are home to the dolphins.
I think I might hear some background information. Let's just make sure, or background noise, just again, reminding folks just joining to mute their phones, their speakers, their computers. We'll use the chat box for questions and we'll monitor that regularly. Thank you. Get off to a smooth start so our recording doesn't have a lot of background going on. So today's agenda is to talk about the connections of the legislation to the funding in Michigan for literacy, to talk about the multi-tiered system of support connection to choosing interventions, to get an overview of what the Michigan Education Corps program is and isn't, a deep understanding and an example of how that's happening in Michigan schools. And then we'll also take questions and answers at the end. If you have questions again in the middle, please use the chat bar. And again, we'll try to pause to make sure we're capturing those questions. And I think somebody just joined. Please just make sure your speakers and your phones are muted. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Lisa.
So the Michigan Education Corps is found in the 35A legislation, and it's Section 6 of the law, and the legislators have allotted about $2.5 million in funding for this intervention program. MEC, which is the acronym for Michigan Education Corps, does require about a $5,000 contribution, and Holly's going to share more about that and what that looks like later on. So we just wanted to bring forth a couple of funding sources that schools are commonly using to support with the intervention program. So the additional instructional time grant, which goes directly to districts, is used for providing intervention, extended day, additional supports for students who are in need. That is a funding source that can be used to support Michigan Education Corps. And then also 31A funding, which is state aid funding that is for at-risk students. So if your comprehensive needs assessment determines that this is a right fit for you and something that you need, you can use both of those funding sources for that. Thank you. So as you know, Michigan has a vision. The vision here is that every learner in Michigan's public schools will have an inspiring, engaging, and caring learning environment that fosters creative and critical thinkers who believe in their ability to positively influence Michigan and the world beyond. And this is part of the support and that Michigan become a top 10 state in the next 10 years. So we can't really talk about doing that without focusing on the vision. As part of the Top 10 and 10 strategic plan, we also have a mission, which is support learning and learners. And the mission really provides the purpose for the organization. So in order for Michigan to become a top 10 state, we have a strategic plan, which consists of 7 goals and 44 objectives. And you'll see that early literacy and multi-tiered systems of support, otherwise known as MTSS, falls into the learner-centered support. So this graphic is meant to help operationalize that strategic plan. So both early literacy and MTSS are part of the statewide vision for supporting and becoming the top 10 and 10. And we can't talk today about intervention without talking about what Michigan is doing to support core instruction. So for those of you that have been actively involved in the early literacy initiative, I know we have some coaches joining us today. We have building leaders. We have largely been focusing on the essential instructional practices that have been put out by GELN in support with the department. Exemplify and show our focus on core instruction and ensuring that every child in every classroom and every day has these research supported practices. And so we wanted to start out by ensuring that everyone on the call today knows that that is a focus for the department in moving literacy forward. So we're first going to talk a little bit about multi-tiered systems of support. And this graphic shows we've been working on what we call a practice profile to help operationalize what multi-tiered systems of support is. So we now have a common definition, which consists of a philosophy and guiding principles, some essential components which exemplify the adult behaviors that we would expect in a full functioning system. And then we also have some kind of core ingredients that we would expect to see. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those. So here MTSS is defined. I'm going to read that definition for you. MTSS is a multi-tiered system of supports. It's a comprehensive framework comprised of a collection of research-based strategies designed to meet the individual needs of the whole child, including academic, behavioral, physical, social, and emotional. MTSS intentionally interconnects all systems and subsystems in support of successful learners, schools, centers, and community outcomes. Core features of MTSS are interrelated and complementary. The MTSS framework provides schools and districts an efficient way to organize resources to support educators in the implementation of effective practices with fidelity so all learners can succeed. So I mentioned that there's 5 essential components. And the ones that we're going to focus on today are the tiered delivery system, as well as selection, implementation of instruction, interventions, and supports. And mostly we'll focus on the interventions, but we really want to acknowledge, again, in the tiered delivery system, our focus statewide on tier 1, and then also how MEC is a tier 2 intervention. So it's in addition to your strong tier 1 instruction.
So think about for a moment how you historically have chosen interventions for building implementation. Many times it's based on a need or a great practice that we've heard someplace. We asked this question for our transformation zones who are working to develop the MTSS practice profile with us. So just a little caveat, the MDE has been in that process for quite a while. We're still working through our draft. It's still having updates and changes, and the transformation zone districts are those helping us to make sure that it's going to be a good fit in the field. So we're working, anyway, so back to the transformation zones. And so they told us a lot of times that they chose things based on what the vendor had to say about their program, word of mouth, things that were working really great in other spaces. When we're thinking about selection and implementation of instruction, interventions, and supports, and trying to be really intentional about those things in our MTSS framework, this, I won't read it to you, what's on the screen is the definition of that component. So take just a minute to read through that. So this is saying that we're going to think about the needs of the student in terms of a whole child and make sure that the resources and the interventions that we choose to support those needs are inclusive of those thoughts. So how we do that is using a process or a tool to help make sure that our decisions are based on data and that they're based on our needs. So one of the things that we've been working with in our transformation zone districts is to use a Hexagon tool. And some of you may have heard of this before. It's not new to Michigan. Many of our districts have experienced this through different projects that they've done or maybe through their MTSS. But basically the Hexagon tool has these components. You consider the needs, you consider the fit. So based on what your maybe philosophy or instructional model is, does that, whatever you're going to choose, fit the need? Think about the resource availability. Do we have the funds, the time, the money, the professional learning space available to use this, whatever it is we're choosing? What's the evidence behind the practice or the intervention? Are we ready to replicate that? So if we try it out, are we ready to kind of scale that up and replicate it? Can it be replicated in our context as it has been in other contexts? And then what is our capacity as a system to be able to implement this product? So taking all of those factors into consideration. So these are just a few of the questions that this Hexagon tool would ask a team to review. Is there evidence that the intervention addresses the specific areas of need identified? So especially in literacy, we know there's a lot of things going on with kiddos and to their success. So are we really addressing the need through the intervention? How does the intervention fit with other initiatives? Think about all the ways we can approach literacy, what our kids' needs are. How does this answer fit into play? Are there training resources available? Again, this is just one question of a set of questions for each of those factors, but one thing to consider. Another, is there data to demonstrate effectiveness of the intervention? And again, in the context of our own students. Is there a qualified expert to support the intervention? Many times we choose things based on good intention, and then we forget that we need somebody there to help us continually along the way to implement that intervention as it's expected to. Does the intervention advance teacher knowledge? Again, the teacher knowledge and skills are so important to the success of an intervention. Going back to when Lisa shared about the essential practices, just getting everyone in the state on the same page around core instruction of those practices is huge because we want to advance teacher knowledge. We all want to be better educators in literacy. And so that's just a little snippet glance into our multi-tier system of supports that we're working on at the department. Not any groundbreaking new MTSS pieces, but trying to put it together with the most up-to-date research we can. So that is in the works. You saw the 5 components. We talked a little bit about how we might look at specific components and think about using a tool to make data-formed decisions around interventions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Holly. So I'm going to stop sharing so she can share, except I'm having, did it allow you to share?
No, this says I cannot start share screen while that.
No problem.
Give us just a moment.
My cursor was frozen.
Right.
I'm going to turn it over to Holly to talk a little bit about the Michigan Education Core intervention.
All right, and bear with me just a moment while I bring this up. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to be able to share with you today. And especially thank you to Department of Education colleagues for taking the time and for helping to make this connection. This is really important work that we're all involved in together. I will note on this slide, you'll notice a bit.ly link, and through that, it's a Google Drive folder that will have handouts that will have more information, the research, as well as a copy of some items that I'm going to make reference to here in the next 15-20 minutes or so. But the first thing I want to say is that we exist because of partnerships. And so I am grateful for all of our school partners, as well as partners, both legislators, as well as through the Department of Education, that we've been able to grow and just have a lot of success here in Michigan with this intervention. The Michigan Education Core, we are an initiative of the Hope Network, and we replicate 3 AmeriCorps programs that began in Minnesota: Preschool Reading Corps, K-3 Reading Corps, and we are currently piloting a Math Corps program. The Minnesota Reading Corps began in 2003 in Head Start preschool classrooms and expanded rapidly. Minnesota Reading Corps and Math Corps currently serve over 30,000 kids annually with almost 1,600 tutors. The expansion occurred because of significant gains for kids, demand from schools, bipartisan legislative support, and partnership with the Minnesota Department of Education. With the success of Reading Corps in Minnesota, the Corporation for National Community Service commissioned a large-scale study conducted by NORC at the University of Chicago. The randomized control trial study for K-3 Reading Corps and the quasi-experimental design study for preschool Reading Corps conducted by the University of Chicago confirmed that Reading Corps significantly accelerated literacy achievement for children age 3 to grade 3.
Holly,
Yes.
would you be able to speak up just a little bit?
Sure. There's the mic. All right. More specifically, they confirmed that Reading Corps is replicable and scalable with any demographic group and setting. Reading Corps generates a significant, meaningful, positive impact on student reading achievement, particularly for students who are at high risk for low achievement, those coming from economic disadvantage or dual language learners. Is that volume better? All right. The researchers of those university, don't forget to mute your microphone if you are online. Thank you. The researchers of those studies noted one key variable that had the most impact on the program's successful outcomes, and that was coaching. This is a summary table of seminal work by Joyce and Showers from 2002 that shows what we all already know, which is that quality training in and of itself is good, but it will not generally translate into changed adult behavior without ongoing quality coaching in authentic settings. And that is why Reading Corps is intentionally designed with a dual layer of ongoing coaching support to ensure high fidelity of program implementation. Reading Corps has expanded to 13 states in the nation, including Massachusetts and Florida. Georgia will be coming on board next year. In Michigan, we are currently serving in 72 schools with our programs. We have about 117 tutors, and our goal is that we'll serve about 2,700 kids. And you can see here, oops. You can see here all of the different districts. So we are a statewide program. Preschool Reading Corps and K-3 Reading Corps are grounded in an MTSS framework. In Preschool Reading Corps, tutors focus on Tier 1 supports, but they may also serve small groups and individual students in the classroom. In K-3 Reading Corps, tutors provide Tier 2 one-on-one service to kids who are just below grade level. Our partners are very familiar with the visual of our model. So we start with the foundation of database decision-making. We are evidence-based and we progress monitor regularly. And we pay rigorous attention to implementation fidelity. We wrap around all of this with multiple layers of instructional coaching. And I'll talk more about this as we go along. ReadingCore meets the definition of an evidence-based intervention program. Experimental research has taught us that any intervention that will have a meaningful effect on student learning needs to attend to some critical variables, including adequate dosage, which is frequency and duration of an intervention, fidelity of implementation, frequent progress monitoring of student learning, and regular database decision-making. ReadingCore was intentionally designed by educators in Minnesota to include all three of these variables. Further, the third grade reading bill requires evidence-based intervention to mean that there have not only been studies that show meaningful effects with kids in schools, but that the studies have used experimental design, like a randomized control study. In preschool ReadingCore, Michigan Education Corps places a tutor to serve all children all day, every day in the classroom. They are working alongside the lead teachers and classroom assistants to provide language and literacy-rich activities that supplement the core curricula that's going on. The tutors will benchmark all children in the classroom 3 times a year. This is the last year we will be using the IGD measures. Next year, we will be using the PELI measures. The tutors will also provide intervention and they will progress monitor students that are below age level expectations. And the goal is kindergarten readiness by the time students are ready for that transition. Largely what the tutors are doing is centered around the repeated read aloud. So they are working on that every single day. And then they are very intentional about what they are teaching with the kids during the natural course of the preschool day. There's a huge emphasis on oral language development and extended discourse, as well as high quality interactions with books and print. And one thing to note is that the experimental research that was done demonstrated that preschool ReadingCore has an impact on kids regardless of which type of preschool or which type of core curricula is present in a preschool classroom. In the K-3 model, it's different. Tutors are working with kids one-on-one every day for 20 minutes every day. They focus on a research-based targeted. They progress monitor weekly.
I love how you like hand in doing keyboard.
Oh, thank you. And they will progress monitor weekly. We use FastBridge learning curriculum-based measures. On average, students are achieving grade level proficiency in about 14 weeks. Here are the interventions that the tutors are trained to deliver. These are all scripted and they are all based on principles of direct instruction. The focus is on rate or automaticity, accuracy, as well as expression. Tutors deliver this, but the interventions themselves are chosen by internal coaches as well as master coaches together to make sure that we are using the data to make sure there's the right instructional fit. Finally, the tutors and the coaches meet once a month to review all student data. So you recall that kids are progress monitored. So they take a look at every child's graph. They apply database decision-making to determine what to do next, whether to maintain, to change an intervention, or maybe what needs to happen to accelerate progress. Coaches also conduct those fidelity checks for both interventions and assessment, and that's done through direct observation with performance feedback, and then they provide that ongoing coaching support. Family engagement is a secondary component for ReadingCore, albeit not less important, and tutors are intentional in regularly sending home materials at the child's instructional level to engage with a caregiver at home. So one example is last year, our K-3 ReadingCore tutors sent home over 24,000 reading materials with kids who were receiving ReadingCore intervention. And 88% of those kids brought a journal back with a parent's signature. And in preschool, it was even higher, it was 94%. So we've seen very good results from that. So if we're data-based, we have to show you some data. So one of the most important things our program looks at is growth, because as you know, if a child is below grade level, then they can't grow at the same rate as their grade level peers. They have to grow faster. So we have growth targets for our kids in ReadingCore. So the top table there shows last year statewide in students in grades K through 3 on our literacy measures, the percent of students who met or exceeded the growth rate targets for their grade level. Okay, so these are kids who met or exceeded the growth rate targets. And this year, I pulled these data right around January 10th. These are growth data from just the start of the school year through then for 2017-18. So that gives you a sense of where our kids are at. We tend to see most growth in our K-3 kids from fall to winter. But the point is that we're very intentional about these growth data, because we can't wait to find out if the intervention is working or not. We need to know soon. This slide, I'm not going to read it to you, but it just gives you a sense of, in the last, about 5 years since we've been working with schools in Michigan, how many kids we've served, what we're looking at in terms of kids' growth, those kids who meet our exit criteria and then continue to maintain progress. Fidelity is important, and then I'll draw your attention. So every year we survey internal coaches, teachers, principals, and say, is this integrated, or how important is this to your MTSS work? And so many of them say, yeah, we agree or strongly agree, it is very important. And then our Read at Home data here again. One question we commonly get, who are our tutors? Our tutors are individuals who serve as AmeriCorps members. This can be anyone 18 years or older. The majority of our tutors, when we survey them, these are individuals who are looking at a career in teaching or some kind of work in education. We work with schools to make final selection of the tutors who will work or will serve in the buildings. We do pay a living stipend, and when tutors complete their service, they qualify for an education award that can be used to pay off student debt or pay ahead for credit. For those who are 55 or older, they can make a gift of that education award to a child, grandchild, stepchild, or foster child. There are also post-secondary perks. For example, those who serve in the preschool ReadingCore program can apply the training as well as their service hours towards their CDA. The tutors are supervised by that building internal coach, and I'll say more about that, a master coach, and I'll say more about that one, but also our staff, the MAC staff. So we have a AmeriCorps program director, and we have 2 coordinators on staff who help to provide support to our schools. So those internal coaches, so those are individuals who are chosen by administrators, and administrators should plan for those individuals to spend about 6 to 9 hours per tutor per month in their building for time to just support the tutor and to support integration of the program into the school's literacy framework. These are the first go-to people for tutors, and they are also there to help uphold fidelity to our model. So as individuals are looking at, well, who would make for a good internal coach for the program, I'm not going to read this to you, but this gives you a sense of all of those really key activities that we are looking for an internal coach to be able to do. They need to be able to help with scheduling. They might need to be able to troubleshoot if there are some student behavior issues. They are the tutor's main go-to person. And what's critical, and I'll keep coming back to this, is just be sure to allocate adequate time. There's more time as the program gets started that's needed, and as the program moves along, it becomes a little bit less, but we really do ask that you are thoughtful about that time estimation. So the master coaches are individuals who serve as independent contractors with us, Michigan Education Corps, and they are assigned to multiple school sites and provide support to internal coaches and tutors. Their primary purpose is to support fidelity to the ReadingCore model, and they are continually working with schools to ensure ReadingCore is aligned with the school's MTSS literacy framework. So let's say you are interested in becoming a partner with Michigan Education Corps, which we would welcome. So here practically speaking are the steps. First, please read our guide to apply. That is available in that Google Drive folder and will give you everything you need to know about becoming a preschool or K-3 ReadingCore site. Further, there's an application. Those applications are open now and the link will be available at the end. It is also available in the guide to apply. We will respond back, we'll confirm the number of tutors, and then there will be a site agreement. Site agreements are signed by district superintendents as well as building principals. In those site agreements, we will ask specifically, who is your internal coach? And in fact, we're going to ask you that when you apply. Who is going to be your internal coach? These are the things to think about. So remember that 6 to 9 hours per tutor per month. They need also the first year to attend all of the training. After that, returning internal coaches will need to attend refreshers. We'll need a space for tutoring, access to a computer, internet, and printer, and that's because we provide an online data management system for all of the program data which schools access. And then you heard mentioned also there is a participation fee, and we are nonprofit. We are largely supported through our grant in 35A. However, we do ask for a participation fee that helps to offset some of our costs, allowing us to reach even more schools and more kids. But when you think about the math behind that participation fee, what this slide highlights is the kind of what do we get. I will point out that we do meet the requirements of what is referred to as the third grade reading bill. We provide language for school improvement plans, and I'm going to say more about that in just a minute. And we do align with all of the essentials that were referenced earlier. So with our partnership with the Department of Education, we want to ensure that all our ReadingCore sites and schools are really explicit about how ReadingCore is part of their MTSS framework, and that this is articulated clearly in their school improvement plans. We do ask building principals to attend at least 3 data reviews every school year, and I recommend the seasonal data reviews after we have benchmarked all of our kids. With regards to the school improvement plans, we've worked closely with staff at the department as well as at the ISD level to develop guidance for schools. In the spring, we will also send you data that schools can use to cut and paste in their school improvement plans for reporting on ReadingCore. Whether or not you choose to use this is up to you, but we will provide that. All right.
The glove next to something, and then.
Oh, can somebody please mute their mic?
All right, we're gonna
We had a couple questions.
pause here. Yep.
One was, let me check to see. Are you able to share a list of schools and contacts that are currently implementing MEC?
Yes. If you send me an email, I have a list of schools administrators who have been willing to give their contact information to share. Absolutely.
And the emails will be at the
end. Yep. You'll see a slide at the very end.
And the other thing they're looking for is the address again to, I think, get the bit.ly.
Oh, sure. You know what? Why don't I? Okay, I'm not trying to make people dizzy here, but I'm going to go all the way back. There you go. And you see my email address down there at the bottom too. So you don't even, oops, sorry, you don't even have to wait till the end. You can just grab it right now. So I'll leave it on there.
And the presentations, if you're interested, you have Holly's email address, and you will have Lisa's address and mine also as well to be able to request the presentation. That will probably be the quickest way to receive those. That was all the questions that had come in the chat so far.
Great, keep those coming. Oh, thank you for putting that in the chat, Kelly. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so at this time, it is truly a pleasure to introduce to you one of our esteemed building administrators who we have had just a really fantastic partnership with. And this is Mike Walsh. He is with Baldwin Heights Elementary School in Greenville. And I'm going to need to stop the share. Okay, hold on, Mike. We're going to switch you over.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to let him do the talking because he just does such a fabulous job.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to try and share my screen a little bit here. And let me know if that works.
Yeah, we gotcha.
You got me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank everybody for having me and for just allowing me to kind of talk a little bit about our partnership here at Baldwin Heights and ReadingCore, AmeriCorps. So again, my name is I'm Mike Walsh. I'm the principal of Baldwin Heights Elementary School. And here in Greenville, Michigan, as you can see from the slide, we are kind of in the middle, toward the middle of Michigan a little bit, kind of just northeast of Grand Rapids area, that kind of thing. Just some demographics of our area, as you can see, we're not a very diverse population here in Greenville ethnically, though we are socioeconomically pretty diverse. And at my school would probably be considered, of the 4 elementaries here in Greenville, the most affluent at 47% economically disadvantaged. Back in 2014, 15, and 16, we were, and in the beginning of 17 too, we were a focus school. So for those of you, I'm sure you all know what it means, but focus school just means that we had a pretty big gap between our top and bottom 30%. So what that did was it necessitated us to do some different things. Just to give you an idea of some other things about Baldwin Heights, our MTSS framework is a tier 1, brand new actually this year. We are kind of a combination of Benchmark Advance, and it used to be just called just Benchmark, I believe, in the old thing, but that's kindergarten through 3rd grade. We also do the Macy units for 4th and 5th grade. And then, so that's kind of new. We used to do the Macy units all K-5, but we are trying out the Benchmark Advanced curriculum to focus on the Big 5, things that we were not doing at the lower L for many years. We're kind of, the pendulum swung a couple years ago for us from, we were using Storytown almost exclusively, and then there's kind of a big push to do a lot of workshop model types of things. The two sisters came out with their book, and we moved all completely in that workshop direction, but we kind of really lost a little bit of phonics and some other things at the early grades. So we've kind of swung back into the middle of between a combination of workshop model and teaching things like phonics and phonemic awareness and the other aspects of the Big 5. So other things about us at Tier 1, we kind of committed through the Reading Now Network to do 90 minutes daily of reading and writing instruction. Tier 2 level, we have some instructional grouping through our program and through Benchmark Advance. They do a lot of those kinds of things. It's kind of built into the program and what we do. And then, of course, we do have ReadingCore, which is our other aspect of Tier 2, but this is just what we had kind of in place already. And then at Tier 3, we do have kind of an intensive daily one-on-one and small group skill-targeted instruction with research-based interventions that are delivered by our interventionists, which are kind of more or less paraprofessionals for the most part that go in. And I'll talk a little more about that just in a second, but I just wanted to give you kind of a little bit of who we are in our framework. Now, we do have some other supports that we put in place. We have some one-on-one mentoring and tutoring by just some retired teachers and parent volunteers, as I'm sure many schools do. We have some small group book clubs and literature circles by some of those retired teachers, and even a retired administrator who comes in from time to time to work with some of our folks. And then we also do a little partnering with Montcalm Community College. We have some tutors there that have been with us in the past. We haven't started those up this year, but we actually have plans to start that in the next couple weeks actually with them. So just some other, trying to take advantage of as many resources, you know, kind of as we possibly can through those entities. The real main reason though that I'm here though is to kind of talk a little bit about ReadingCore at Baldwin Heights and what that's meant for us. So we've had ReadingCore now for about 2.5 years, and it really came from our focus school status. So with that gap between the top and bottom 30%, we found our resources spread quite thin, and what we needed to do was really focus in on those bottom 30% kids to try and raise their achievement to the level that our top kids were at, because obviously we certainly did not want to have our top kids, you know, come down to close the bottom 30, to close that gap. So we wanted to raise the bottom up as much as possible. And in that process, we looked at all sorts of programs that were out there, and we had to look at how we were doing interventions in the building completely different than we had done before. There were a lot of push-in types of things that we were doing, and we really weren't focused in on skills at the time. It was all about kind of Fountas and Pinnell levels. That was like a big thing with my teachers forever. I don't know why, but they wanted to just keep moving levels up, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it really didn't target specific skills. So, you know, along comes ReadingCore, and I think it was through one of the other administrators in the district. Her name's Katie Beebe. She's out at Lincoln Heights, and kind of brought the program to Greenville at first, and then we just sort of have taken off with it in Greenville from there, with each of our schools having sometimes 1 to 2 tutors, and actually at Baldwin Heights currently we have 3 tutors right now. But it's an extremely important part of our literacy framework, that tier 2 piece that sometimes we're not able to always have time to address properly in the classrooms with teachers. These tutors are able to come in and, you know, pull those targeted kids, and they work, you know, one-on-one with them for 20 minutes a day, and it's such a huge benefit to our kids, and I'll get into that in the next slide. But the teachers and instructional coach, you know, will comment frequently about how the program has helped our students with their motivation and feeling confident in their reading, whereas they weren't before. ReadingCore also targets a demographic that it's not that we don't want to target this particular group of kids, because they tend to be those yellow kids that are right on the border there. So ReadingCore doesn't take the bottom kids. You know, they don't take like the very last, you know, groups of kids or anything like that, like we would typically have to do in our intervention. So the ReadingCore tutors, they take those yellow borderline kids, and that's really where we get a lot of bang for our buck. So, you know, the ReadingCore tutors, they come in and they target skills on these students that are right on the bubble. And it's a very stringent program. Like the tutors go through a very large training process that I know that they've already touched on, but when done with fidelity, those tutors make a tremendous impact on those kids, to the point where we've typically seen when ReadingCore dismisses a student, because it's not easy to get dismissed either. And I know that sometimes in school we tend to, you know, every 6 to 8 weeks we shuffle a bunch of kids in and out of our intervention, but ReadingCore really makes sure that the kids have a long-lasting grasp of those concepts before they dismiss them onto the next, or out of the program, and then they would take somebody else new. So, if you look further, the best aspects that I kind of wanted to highlight about ReadingCore at Baldwin Heights are the fact that it is evidence-based. A lot of teachers will use anything they can find because sometimes of a lack of resources, which is totally understandable, but it's just, you can't really build an intervention program off of what you find on Pinterest. So depending on the level of teacher and what kind of things that they would go after for their groups would dictate the quality of our tier 2 instruction. And, you know, some of our newer teachers would try and find some new things, and our experienced teachers would try to find things. But with ReadingCore, you don't have to worry about that. They come in and they have very specific evidence-based programs that they use. So you know that whatever they're using is the very best intervention that's evidence-based for the skill that they are trying to work on with those individual kids. The other benefit that I found with ReadingCore is the frequent progress monitoring. Every single one of those tutors, and then in turn, our internal coach through that sharing process that they have, is very aware of where every single one of those kids that is being pulled is at. They're able to give progress to the teachers, who are then able to in turn give progress to parents very quickly and easily through nice graphs and aim lines and all kinds of things about how the kids are doing in the intervention and whether they're projected to be able to be done with the intervention or whether or not they would have to continue. And it's been very positively received. And because of that, the fidelity of the program just has so many checks and balances in place to make sure that things are being done properly. So our instructional coach, her name is Jen Mahar, she is our internal coach. And she works very closely with the tutors, and they in turn work closely with her, and they talk all the time about individual students, the programs that they're using, how they're working, how they're doing. And she's been doing a great job really running those fidelity checks to make sure that things are going well in the program. So it's been very positively received by the staff and the kids because we have that system of checks and balances in place to make sure that everything's being done properly. That collaboration also, not just between our internal coach and the tutors, but also between our internal coach and then the master coach, who has been wonderful and very easy to communicate with. Whenever she's had a question, it's just kind of an email or a phone call away as far as what should we do about this or anything like that. So what we've seen is, as a result, like the very best aspect of this, obviously, the thing that you have to have is increased student achievement. So I have some data that I'll share in a little bit too about that, but that's the best aspect of the program, is the progress that our kids are able to make has been the highlight of how the program has helped us here at Baldwin Heights continue to be successful. If I did have to name one challenge, is that just like any of us, as a principal, I do a lot of hiring of paraprofessionals, of teachers, of all kinds of staff. And just like with any hiring of any staff that I have, the quality of the program, like any other program, of course, is reliant upon the quality of the tutors involved. So the tutors, when you have a good tutor, then you're going to get some amazing outcomes with your kids. If they're able to build those relationships, because we're in the business of school and it's all about the relationships that we're able to build with kids. And if those tutors are personable and they build quality relationships with kids and they work like crazy to do the program with fidelity, then, there's so much research, and we've seen the benefits here at Baldwin Heights of how that just increases student achievement incredibly. But if you have a poor tutor, and and every now and then that happens, if you get a poor tutor or an ineffective tutor, then you don't get that kind of, you don't get those results. The relationships aren't built and you don't see the increase in data. So it really does depend on the quality of who you get. And, we've had some amazing tutors. We've had a couple here and there that haven't worked out, but it's still worth the risk because of the benefits you get from the program. And the fact that ReadingCore has been so easy to work with. If a tutor hasn't worked out, rather than just losing that money, then they have replaced that tutor for us with somebody else that's, in the area. And it's worked out incredibly well. So just some data that I want to be able to share. This is just a little bit too. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so I love looking at this kind of thing, and I could kind of go all day as far as like individual kids and the progress they've made. But, you would expect that an extra 20 minutes a day for an individual student is going to do something for them, because we kind of believe in that concept of core more and more. So these kids are getting their full core curriculum and then ReadingCore on top of their core curriculum. So scheduling can be kind of tricky, but we can always find that time in the day because it's very well worth it for the kids. So since we've implemented ReadingCore, we have seen an increase in the students that are in the 45th percentile ranking or above at the beginning of the year STAR, which is our benchmark assessment that we use, reading over the last 3 years. So when we first implemented ReadingCore, before ReadingCore, we were at about 40%. We're in that green range, and we've now that we've implemented ReadingCore, it's shot up to 52% over the last couple of years now, over the last 3 years with data that we've collected. And in addition, besides seeing the increase in that green, that proficient level, we've seen a decrease then in students in our intervention category, which of course you would expect those two to be related, but you know, that's fallen from 17% of kids that we test in our benchmark were at this intervention level, this red intervention level, and now that's only down to 9%. So we're trying to make our MTSS triangle look actually like a triangle instead of a square block, where we have so many kids at each level that it's almost impossible sometimes to serve them. So we bring in a ReadingCore to help with those yellow kids that are almost ready and just need a little bit more, without having to sacrifice our other resources that are now dedicated to those red kids that are still struggling at the very bottom, trying to improve their student achievement. So it's been really a tremendously positive program since we've started with them. Some other results or trends that we've noticed are that our end of the year test results have also increased those percentile rankings. So I mean, you've seen the beginning of the year that I just showed in the previous slide, and I'll show you that again. So this is the beginning of the year stuff. This is after the summer slide types of things hit. And now at the end of the year, over the last 2 years, because again, we don't have end of the year data for this year because, you know, we won't get that till spring. But, you know, we've gone from the end of the year at 54% to just, you know, that 1 year where we had ReadingCore from 54 to 72% are in that proficient level according to our benchmark assessment. Remember, this is STAR data. And then also a decrease of those intervention categories, you know, from 12% to 4%. If those trends continue, which we believe it will, then our MTSS triangle is actually finally going to look like a triangle, like a normal one that is manageable in our building, so that we can use our resources for what they're supposed to be used for. So, you know, we're very excited, and to see those kinds of results in just a couple of years. Now, don't get me wrong, we've tried implementing other things at this time too, but this has been something that we've been able to track and measure and see an immediate impact as soon as we initiated it. So, you know, this is just an example of one student here at Baldwin Heights. You know, we have 37 students who are being served by ReadingCore currently, right now here at Baldwin Heights. Each tutor takes, you know, that around 15 kids or so. And then this is kind of a graph of a current kindergarten student whose initial benchmark score had like 19 letter sounds, and we've already seen just in the short amount of time a huge growth. They're way past what their aim line should be at the beginning of the year, and you know, so this isn't the STAR test. This is just letter sounds, but you know, and I mean, at Baldwin Heights, I mean, it's hard because our ReadingCore tutors are all looking at lower elementary. This is our first year of using Dibbles, so we'll be able to see by the end of the year how Dibbles data looks. And we've concentrated our ReadingCore tutors all at the lower L, so it really wouldn't do any good to share like state level M-STEP data or anything like that. But this is a little bit of the data that I wanted to share. And I guess to kind of sum up a little bit, would I recommend ReadingCore? I mean, absolutely. We've seen the results. So, you know, if we didn't have the actual numbers and the data and seen those results, then I'd say forget about it. But we've seen those kids, individual students, go up based on, now ReadingCore does their own measurement too, but, you know, I wanted to make sure to share data that, you know, we use in the district to make decisions and look forward to. We've seen incredibly positive results, not just with data, though, with student confidence. The kids are attacking reading in a different way now that we're skill-based. And that's really filtered itself into other aspects. So, you know, I put this quote on my slideshow there, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And the bottom line is that after we did ReadingCore for a year, we reevaluated how we did interventions, and not just here at Baldwin Heights, but at all 4 elementaries here in Greenville. And we modeled how we do our bottom 30% kids, our red kids, after how ReadingCore attacked the yellow kids. with the same kind of interventions and skill-based pieces. Now, we do take small groups versus just one-on-one, but it's still the same concept that we were able to then apply what we learned from ReadingCore to other aspects of what we were doing. So, you know, it's been an incredibly positive program for us. We're very excited, and kind of that's. I know I went a little fast, and I apologize. I get kind of excited when I talk about fun stuff like this, but you know, I'm willing to answer any questions that you have or anything like that. So, what can I do?
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat.
We've been trying to keep up with answering the questions as they appear in the chat.
Sure, sure. Is there any question that hasn't been answered in the chat that I can tackle?
I don't think so. No, Mike, that was excellent. Thank you. And I just personally, I just appreciate the transparency and honesty about, you know, what it really takes to, you know, really assess and make decisions about how to choose an intervention program for the school, and specifically how you've really worked hard to integrate ReadingCore into the overall literacy framework. So really appreciate that. And I appreciate your time today as well.
Well, and I think just one last thing too, you know, just like with anybody you're bringing into the building, whether it's volunteers or whether you're hiring new staff or whether you have a program like ReadingCore, you know, we welcome those tutors with open arms. And I think that has paid off in dividends as well. So anybody thinking about doing the program, make sure that, you know, you give those folks access to everything they need, the space they need, and to really treat them like members of your staff. And I think that has helped the relationships that we've been able to build with our tutors over the years feel like this is their home, so that they continue to be invested emotionally, not just because it's, you know, it's a job or something like that to them, but they really do become part of our staff over time because they're building relationships with our kids, and they're another adult that really cares about each of those kids, kind of like a mentor would. I mean, 20 minutes a day with an adult it's an amazing idea. I wish I could get that for every kid. You know, if every kid had an additional 20 minutes a day working with an adult on a skill-based intervention, but also building a positive relationship with them, I mean, you know, imagine how that would impact school in general, like how that would impact behavior, you know, across the whole school. So, you know, the concepts of ReadingCore are what are also beneficial for us, other than just, you know, what they're able to do for your data or for interventions they're able to give kids, but having those additional folks in the building as members of your staff and really working with kids. And, you know, I mean, some of them stay after school to work with kids too, to continue to tutor them after school. So, I mean, they don't have to be here, but they are, and they're working with kids and they're building relationships. And I mean, that's what we're all about. I mean, that's what all of us do this job for, is to build relationships with kids, and those ReadingCore tutors are why we're able to have such success as well.
Yeah, Mike, there was a question that came up, but I'm going to ask it this way because can you speak to how you are using ReadingCore as it relates to the IRIPs?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. So you know, in the IRIP process, you know, at least the form that we've kind of adopted here in Greenville, you know, you have to, of course, you know, we work with both our STAR data, because we do STAR early literacy for kindergarten, and then we do STAR reading for everybody else, but we also use our DIBELS data. And then teachers identify those students based on DIBELS and STAR who needs an individualized reading improvement plan. So once we've identified those kids, it just kind of depends on where they scored, because ReadingCore is pretty specific about who the profile of the type of student they need to work with. So they can't hit up the kids that are at the very bottom, but they're more in that yellow range based on any testing that's done. So they work with our internal coach to identify those yellow kids, and if those yellow kids need an individualized reading improvement plan, then we absolutely add ReadingCore as another measure of how we are trying to meet the needs of those kids. So you can, besides the Read at Home program, and because you have to have that on the IRIPs, and also besides, what else are you doing? The concept of ReadingCore is what makes the IRIP such an easy form to fill out over time, because you have to identify the exact specific skill that student is deficient in, and then how you're addressing it. So if you have a ReadingCore student who needs an IRIP, that's already done for you. You know exactly what skill that's being targeted, the intervention, the frequency, how many sessions they're going to get, and then you can share that with parents too, as what the goals are going to be for that student. So if you have a student who is in that yellow range that you've identified as needing an IRIP, ReadingCore absolutely meets the requirements of that additional support, and that takes a little bit of the burden off teachers. Not all of it, because we want teachers to own that data too, but it does provide that tier 2 support that sometimes, we have to dedicate toward other kids. So that's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I don't see any other specific questions for you. So why don't we switch screens real quick?
You bet.
And
I'll go ahead and
yeah, thanks
bet.
again, Mike. This is great.
Oh.
If anything else comes up, I'll bring you in.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. Thank you.
Okay. And we will go back here and just a few, sorry, I hope people don't get too dizzy looking at this as I flip through here. Just want to revisit real quick just some logistics, the steps on, if you're interested in partnerships, and we are statewide, so our charge is, we are going to work and partner with schools and really work hard to create the partnerships. If we have a school that's really motivated and we agree, yep, this is gonna work, we're going to work really hard to make that happen as best we can. There have been some good lessons that we've learned, and Mike spoke to some of these, but the first thing I'll say is just to be really thoughtful and intentional about that internal coach. I understand time is significant currency for our schools and for staff, but it's really important to have that person on site, particularly to help make that connection with colleagues, with teachers, and with what the school's overall literacy work is. And it just really makes ReadingCore become all that more rich for the kids that it's serving and the overall impact of the literacy framework. It helps make sure that core instruction is also functioning the way that quality core instruction needs to function as well. Please do think about unexpected transitions. So from time to time, we have coaches that may need unexpected medical leave, those kinds of things. So who can that person now be to step in and take that place to support, as well as we do have tutor turnover. I wish we didn't, but from time to time it does happen. And sometimes it is, due to illness, personal emergencies, those things. Or sometimes tutors do make the decision that maybe it's not the right fit for them. So we really work hard to work on tutor retention, and it's actually pretty high right now. We're at about 84% with our tutor retention, but just to plan for those unexpected things. We want to get tutoring happening as soon as possible. So as your coaches are getting trained to be really thinking about how can we hit the ground running, get the initial group of kids, get them screened with the ReadingCore measures, and just make sure that throughout the duration of the school year, I know that there are a lot of other activities and extra things that come up, but just to be thoughtful about how can we make sure that reading intervention time is prioritized, so we can get kids on grade level and back into core instruction full time. The communication with teachers is critical. I can't tell you, in the last 5 years, every year I get at least a handful of teachers that respond to surveys saying, boy, I would have really loved to have known exactly what intervention the tutors were doing with my kids, or I really would have loved to have seen my kids' progress monitoring graphs. And we strongly encourage it. I can't personally take that information to the teachers, but internal coaches can. And so we really encourage that. And finally, leadership matters. You all know that. So just having a principal that's knowledgeable about what the program is, they know who the tutors are, they know what the tutors are doing with the kids in the building. That's just critical to have that person on board and leading that. So here are the links for applications. They are open today, and we will leave them open through March 29th. That is right before the start of spring break. So we hope that that is ample time for schools to apply. And please do complete those applications, and we will reach out and follow up and have those conversations about what you've applied for, and you know, is this going to be a good positive partnership for everyone involved. So again, we really do want to work with schools, and we really do invite those applications.
Holly, a question right there would
Yeah.
be, is there a program for high school students who are so behind?
I personally, as a former secondary school employee, I wish there were. The closest that we have is Math Core, which is currently still in its pilot stage. Math Core, the goal is algebra readiness and serves students grades 4 through 8. So we are in the pilot stages, meaning we are making sure that that is a quality intervention program. It is evidence-based, we know that, but we need to make sure it's scalable. So that is the closest that we have, but we don't currently have anything for literacy intervention for our older students right now. All right, I am going to leave I think I'm going to leave this information up there. You know, and I always do put a plug in. If you know individuals, they could be neighbors, kids in college, those individuals who are retired, just anyone who might be interested, who you think, boy, you know, this person would really enjoy or make a fantastic tutor. We welcome their application as well. And even though our tutor applications aren't formally open, we do have a list of individuals who call it a wait list perhaps, that when we do have those applications open, we will reach out to them. And so please do have individuals contact us at any time if they are interested in being tutors.
Thank you, Holly. And is the slideshow also in the bit.ly?
Yep, so just from a logistical, I can upload the PDF of the slides that I have into the bit.ly. Do you want me to put the department slides in there as well?
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to do that. Okay,
Send
I
you a
will.
PDF.
Okay, I will upload that PDF right away into the bit.ly, so you have access to all of those as well.
Great. I added the email addresses for Lisa and myself in the chat box, so you have that right there. And I will work at the department as fast as we can to get the recording ADA compliant, which means we have to do the closed captioning and make sure that that's all correct, and hope to get that on our MDE YouTube site by the end of the week, which we can then also add the link into that Google folder once it's done as well. So you'd have the recording right on the Google document. Anything else for you, Lisa?
I'm going to stop the recording and leave the chat up for just a few minutes in case there's any additional questions.